she was sitting in the kitchen. She's a student while cooking and all that. She does a boom.
Imagine someone that now spent millions of naira on a car and then couldn't spend a few 20,000 to buy an extinguisher. That's just, you were just willing to lose the car. The one thing I can assure you is the moment the call comes into the fire station, it takes about 40 seconds for the fire truck to leave the fire station.
Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Hard Knocks Podcast. Hard Knocks is a podcast where we talk about life issues, we talk about culture, we talk about social media trends, personal development. And today, we'll be looking at a topic that people have been shying away from. People are afraid to talk about the topic. It's about fire hazard at home and in the workplace, understanding the causes and prevention. People don't want to hear the word fire, but this is something that happens often and often. And we need to educate people on this to know what to do at every point in time when there are fire hazards. I am the Grandmaster, and I'll be your chief host today. And I have with me my co-host.
Ode, I'll be doing justice alongside our guest on the show today.
So, like I said, we have guests that will be discussing today's topic with me. And I have to my right.
The name is Adesanya Adewale from the Federal Fire Service.
Okay, you can see him that is well kitted in his attire. And to my further right.
I'm Deborah Olatunde.
So like I said, together today we will be discussing the topic. We want to analyze what causes fire incidents and how can it be prevented, both home and at the workplace. And we'll also be talking about the children as well, the safety of the children at home as well. So to start with, what would you say about fire incidents? What could be the cause of fire incidents at home? Let's start with the home first.
Okay.
The home front.
Okay, so I think to delve into that, there might need to be a bit of an understanding of the physics behind what occurs when a fire happens, right? And three components that you will find in any given fire situation will be heat, fuel, and oxygen. Now, at any given point in time, these three components are present, right? Take, for example, in the studio now, we have heat present, right? Because the lighting systems, the cameras, the batteries of the cameras, they generate heat. So heat is present. Fuel is also present. And in fire service, we deem human beings fuel. So, so counting how many people we have in the studio now, we have enough fuel, right?
Wow.
Then oxygen, the air around us contains 21% oxygen. And fire just actually needs 16 to 18%. So that means we have an excess of the three components present. And why don't we have a fire outbreak now? Is because they are not interplaying.
Okay.
So the moment you have the three components interplaying with a connection that is not broken, then you would have a fire outbreak. What that means in essence is if I allow that interplay and I'm not present in the room, then I could have a fire outbreak and I'm not in the room, right? And that's where we now have emergencies that lead to disasters. So the main thing would be try and prevent as much as possible. The main prevention methods will deal with how to make sure that those three components don't interplay for a length of time that can allow for a fire outbreak in that sense. And that's just to do a bit of an introduction to that.
Okay. Now you talk about the part of the human being being regarded as you said fuel, right?
Yeah, yes.
What makes us to be fuel?
Okay, so I would
because I'm sure this will be shocking to people that are listening or watching us at home.
At home, okay, yeah, true that. Okay, so I would explain it in two ways. So first and foremost, we're deemed biofuel because if a human dies and then is buried, if you give it some time, over time they are converted into what we now have as crude oil. Because so that would mean that human beings, our parts, right, the skeletal parts are actually what part of the formation of crude oil. Part of it. Now, that into consideration now, let me do a layman description of things. So take a human being and light him on fire. If he's not fuel, the fire should go out.
Okay, that's true.
Right? But if it is fuel, then the fire will keep burning, because if you take out the presence of fuel, which is one of the components, any of the components of fire, if you take them out, the fire dies. So if I light a person on fire, if it's not fuel, the fire would definitely go out. But if you notice, if you were to put a person on fire, after you see that the person will keep burning, and you have to actually introduce one of the methods of extinction to put the fire out. So that's where you now see that humans are actually deemed as fuel in that sense.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, before we delve further into the household now, let's talk about several misconceptions about fire. For example, maybe in the kitchen,
Yeah.
there's fire coming out of whatever you are cooking, maybe as a result of too much heat
Heat, yeah.
of the oil. So the first thing that comes to mind is, okay, let me pour water into it.
yeah.
So, and some other misconceptions as well. I want you to dwell on that so that people at home can have a fair idea of, okay, the
Okay.
cause, how it happens.
Okay.
Just dwell on it.
Okay, so misconceptions now. Basically, people usually have information, right? And partial information might not really help a situation. So does water serve as a means of extinguishing fire? It does. Right? But now you now have a situation where is it good for all the types of fire? Because fire is classified actually. You have class A fires, class B, class C, class D, then you have class F, right? So class A fires will be free burning materials, plastic, wood. Class B fires are, liquid fuel products like kerosene, petrol, and then class C fires, you're talking gaseous state fire products. Now, you can't use one method to extinguish all of them. So water is good for class A. It's totally horrible for class B, meaning if it's petrol and you try to use water, it's useless. I will explain that when we're further down the line. But now, in the same vein, for cooking oil fires, class F fires now, water is also totally, in fact, it would escalate the situation. Because if you are cooking something, if you ever tried it at home when you're cooking, you notice that when you put something, maybe you wanted to fry plantain, and it has water droplets on it, and you put it in the oil, you will notice that the oil will begin to react.
Yes.
The same vein, if you are to pour water on a cooking oil that is on fire, rather than have that situation extinguished, it will begin to splash that fire all around the kitchen, escalating the situation. So it's horrible in that sense. So now, do people now have a mindset of, water puts out fire? Yes, it does. But is it all types of fire? No. So wrong, that would be a wrong misconception. You can't use water to put out cooking oil fires. And that wrong misconception is, okay, fuel. That means maybe there's fuel on the floor and then it gets on fire. If I was to introduce water, it's a horrible situation because automatically water is more dense. So the water will always go under the fuel products and the fuel and the fire will come on top. Now, if you've seen a video of when you had the ocean, where you had fire on the ocean at one point, the reason was because it was oil products, right, that was on fire. And then you could have oil products on fire on the ocean. So that's why. So water would not put out an oil, liquid fuel fire. It's useless. It will only go under, and then it would even it might increase the problem because now water flows, right? So if I introduce water to something that is not flowing, static liquid product, automatically it will begin to flow. That automatically will mean that the fire will begin to move to other places and touch other things. So water with cooking oil fires, with fuel product fires, is a no. And then now on that note also, and I'll just use this to drop a bit of something, right? So there's a recent situation that happened in Nigeria. Now the cost of fuel has gone up.
Yeah.
In fact, at the moment, we don't know whether we're getting to 1,005, 1,218. We don't know what the fuel price is currently at this time as we're talking. It could have gone up now, right? Now, because of that, for some reason, if there's ever a fuel tanker accident, that means maybe a tanker with fuel falls on the road. Nigerians now see, fuel is now gold, right? So they tend to want to go and get fuel, right? And now the problem with that is, first and foremost, there would always be, whenever a tanker is on that has liquid fuel content, dispenses its content on the floor, there is a high tendency of an explosion or a fire outbreak. Why? Is because number one, you would always have fumes around, and these fumes can actually travel and then get inflamed and bring back the fire to the fuel source. And definitely, if it's on the road, you could have people cooking on the road. You could have anybody doing smelting work on the road, and that could lead to a fire outbreak, right? Number two, the car engines are hotter. So if the car engines are hotter, automatically, if that fuel is to touch an engine that is hot, it could ignite it, and then you have a fire outbreak. And then number three, which is interesting, and really at this point, I want to give a caveat. I don't have anything against Chelsea fans, but usually we would have a Chelsea fan that will come to that party with a cigarette. Now, how do we know it's a Chelsea fan? Because we see the jersey after the fire explosion and all that. And I just need to say that in that sense. I'm seriously, I'm not against Chelsea fans. I totally respect Chelsea.
I don't
respect them. Let me say that. But I do like Chelsea. No, I don't like them. Okay, don't just leave that side of things. But usually, so in that sense, if it's fuel on the road, is it sensible to go and fetch? No. 99% of the time, you have a fire outbreak. Now, if I now try to put out that fire outbreak with water, the content begins to flow, and I just increase the problem. But I will need foam. That means water mixed with detergent sauce to put out that fire, and then I'm successfully able to put out the fire in that sense. That's just some of the misconceptions, and there are still more, but we'll do on that as well.
Okay, so let me take it up from there. Now, I want to look at responsiveness. That's where I'm taking the discussion to now of your agency.
Okay.
Right? How responsive are you guys? And I'm asking this with a little bit of bias against, because it's first of all a government agency.
Okay.
Yeah, and we know what happens. Government business is everybody's business. Do you think you people have successfully along or over the years been able to preach both prevention, and then where it comes up, been able to be on time?
Okay, to arrest the situation.
Yes, to arrest the situation.
Okay, I think to answer that, I would answer that in two parts, right? The first part would be prevention. And if you notice, I'm on a podcast, right? And what is that? Sensitive. We're trying to sensitize people to the, create an awareness to the fact that you could have a fire outbreak and then how to handle the situation. So in the area of prevention and then in the area of sensitization exercises, yes, we do carry out a lot of sensitization exercises. We radio mediums, the TV stations, we do seminars that actually the fire service, and the fire service now in Lagos State, you have both federal and state. And then both agencies would have their own separate seminars at different times in the year where they engage the public. And you can always come on, ask questions.
Can I cut you short there?
Yes.
Now, let me move to you. I want you to, now, if I wouldn't ask you, but I will ask, because it's, of course, hosting and let it not be like I'm pushing my own bias.
Okay.
When you talked of orientation,
Okay.
at least I know you have a background in health and
Safety, yeah.
and public safety, right? When last did you hear any sensitization on any of these mediums? Yes, maybe on fire. To be sincere.
Honestly, I don't really hear anything
Okay,
about
so
fire.
maybe you should now react to him on that basis.
I don't really hear anything about fire, honestly. The only place I get fire information from is like maybe I'm taking a course or I'm reading fire articles online or something.
Okay.
But it's never through fire agency or whatever.
Okay. So I would argue, now I'm biased, right? Because I'm representing the agency. So don't expect me to argue against the agency because I don't want to lose my job, jokingly. But on a more serious note, so she's now demographically, right? If you are taking a sample case of maybe a group of people, and that's Lagos State, she cannot represent a percentage where we can say a sizable percentage where we can argue on that the either against or for. I don't know if you get what I mean.
For you to have the reliable information, you have to carry out the research.
Exactly, research.
The
then,
proper research to know if people are...
So I asked that question because, well, I'm not a radio person.
Okay.
But I know that growing up, I know what the National Orientation Agency stands for, and they work across different government agencies, parastatal. And we used to see things on, let's say NTA, you just see different... what is it called? Orientation for different agencies. And I'm trying to think back. Was there really anything on fire?
Then, okay.
Then, and I can't really remember. Now, I'm now coming down to this era where it is not the TV era, it's more of the internet age. And I'm trying to look at, do you even have an Instagram page? Let's start with that.
Okay, good question, actually. So, fire service, yes, there's an Instagram page. Personally also, because I do most sensitization exercises. So take for example, if you go to my Instagram page, my safety page, you would notice that Valentine's Day there was a jingle that was put out with regards to creating sensitization around people that would want to
your
use
personal Instagram page. What about theirs?
Yeah, fire service. Yeah, they have a.
Can we confirm that?
Yeah. If you go on the website, Fedfire.
Okay, I'm just trying to see what they do on the Instagram handle. And because I'm like I said, I have a bias.
Yeah, no.
And that's why I'm asking this question.
That's a good question.
Because everything with government, has K-leg.
Okay.
So I don't know. I still am not convinced because all the time we've heard of fire. So why most of the fire outbreaks we've heard and then there are always casualties.
Yeah.
Yes, and I know a lot of the blame we put on the people and all of that, and it starts from sensitization.
Yeah.
So, and yes, we cannot question the fact that there is sensitization, but is it adequate?
Okay.
Judging
so
by like,
the
is it
standard of
adequate?
things, yeah.
Yes.
So arguing on social handle. Now for social handles, there is a bit of a snag in a sense there because for you to put out content that you have to put out content that people would not just educative content now, but something that people would love to listen to, engaging content, right? So I have to now start getting funny, start getting song wise and all that. Now mixing that with educational content, sometimes you might just see it and scroll up, right? But now, so are we working towards that angle of things? Yes. Take for example, and this is so I'm represent as well as I'm representing the fire service. I'm also representing personally what I do, right? So if you go on my Instagram handle, you would see that it was like a skit per se I made on creating awareness on Valentine's Day on aromatherapy and using candles, scented candles, and all that, and how to handle the situation properly. Now, do I have other things? Yeah, I do. And I think maybe I might just do a snippet of something I do. So I rap a little, right? So, and then I have a song I'm currently working on.
Can you do that for us? Yeah.
No, maybe at the end. No. That's why I said I'll give you a taste of it at the end of the. When I get to the end of the podcast, if you do remind me, I'll give you.
I will definitely remind you.
Okay. So you would see, you will get a taste of it now. So are we working on things like that? Yes. Like take for example, if there's a fire outbreak, there's always a newscasting agency present, and they usually will take an interview of the fire service. How many of us have watched the interview? Raise your hand on the set.
I think I've seen one.
One?
Yes, I've seen one.
The interview. I didn't get that question.
You see, so now why? Do you know why? Because basically, if you were watching it, you would change the channel.
Maybe because it happened to someone that I know very well.
Exactly. So you see the point.
My mother-in-law, to be precise.
Okay. So you
had
to. So you had to actually watch that, right? So now, but if you were at home and you were just watching your TV and you saw maybe they were interviewing someone from fire accident, you would definitely want to say, "Oh, this is not really something bothering me." Why? Because it's not close to home. But if you notice what he said, it was somebody related to him, so he had to watch that, then also try and get information on how to help the situation better next time. So now, on that note, are we doing more? Is there room for improvement? There is, but are we doing more than we're doing before? Yes. Sensitization exercises in Lagos per se, has it gone exponentially higher? Yes, it has. 10 years ago, we didn't even use any of the social media handles. We didn't use any of the TV stations or radio stations. We're just in our stations waiting for your call. Now we are doing a lot of that, right? And there's a lot of partnerships that are ongoing with agencies, with artists to try and get more of the sensitization exercise in the right space and in the right form.
So for Debbie, what do you think? Because you obviously agreed with my submission. So where do you think they are missing it in terms of sensitization? And I'm speaking based on your background. Yeah. Where do you think they are missing it in terms of because you said that you've seen sensitization in other aspects of public health and safety, but you rarely see in the aspect of fire. Yeah.
Okay.
Of fire.
Okay. Well, the thing is that I think they should try to create more awareness, create platform where people are going to get to know more about fire and all that. Because like you say, people will watch TV, hear news about fire, and they'll just keep it. There should be something attracting them to want to watch it.
Okay.
You should create something that will attract the attention of the public. Because fire is a really important topic. You really, really need to talk. You really need to be aware of the importance of taking care of fire and all that. So you need to create good awareness.
Okay.
Also, I think talking about sensitization now, I think that work can be taken to the corporate world. I know for sure in the oil and gas industry, fire and safety measures are well pronounced.
Oh, very, very well.
Very well pronounced.
Very well pronounced, true.
But for some other sectors, I'm not sure it is like that.
Okay.
And it's one area that I think you guys should look into. Or is there anything that you've been doing in that regard? Because if you cannot approach the populace,
Yeah.
at least through the corporate organizations, through schools, something can still be done. You can still reach them through
Yeah.
these channels that I've mentioned now. So
Yeah.
is there anything you guys are doing in
Yes,
that
so
direction?
and I'm glad you did mention that. So now for the corporate organization sectors, there are some laws that govern how they work that requires them to do some safety measures per se, firewise in that sense. So you have OSHA,
Yes.
and then those bodies they're not related to the fire service, but they carry out their own inspection, and one of the documentation you need to submit has to show that you have kept up with your fire prevention measures, right? So in that line, organizations now are forced to reach out, right, to get them in their documentation in order. And why it's more pronounced in the oil and gas sector is because of the volatility of the product, right? Because usually, if you don't manage a situation where you could have serious consequences, dire consequences to both life and property. So that's why, in that sense, it looks like the oil sector is focused on more than other sectors. But apart from that, the fire service does, according to the National Fire Safety Code 2013, the fire service is mandated to carry out an inspection of the premises at least once a year. Usually twice a year, but at least once a year, that carry out inspection of any premises that is business is conducted. And what they try to ascertain is it conducive is it safe for human existence and dwelling? And then they try and see, is it safe for business discussions and business interactions now. So do we do that? Yes. And both Lagos State, Federal, you usually would have them visit, right? Check your perimeter, do some documentation checks and all that. But do we have enough hands to cover the whole of Lagos State? Not as much as we would hope for. And I think if you trace it back, to some things, and I'll discuss on that later, but not as much as we hope for, but we do cover a sizable percentage. So take for example, you won't expect that, okay, you might say, oh, but Yarisi that sells fried rice in my area on the corner of my street, we don't go there. Well, if we went to every Yarisi shop to go and check, then definitely we'll need like 1 million foot soldiers
the
to do that. Yeah,
population of Lagos State.
Exactly. So do we have enough to go around? No. And the reason is you trace it down to, okay, you have a budget allocated per year. And that budget would inculcate how many people are employed or employable as a service. So based on that, we now have to, okay, manage situations, right? So, okay, more volatile areas, we spend more time there. We go to areas where you have more fire calls in a year, like, strategically, where was last year, where did we have more of the phone calls coming in for fire related incidences? Then we put our efforts and machinations to that area in that sense. So that's just to, I think I like that question.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about families and households.
All right.
So there are a lot of risk factors when it comes to fire hazards at home. So can you explore that area? Identify those risk factors, because there are a lot of assumptions when it comes to fire hazard at home. People feel, okay, there are some things we do that are not really right.
Yeah.
There are some things that we overlook at home. So I would want you to throw more light on that.
Okay. So let me try as much as possible to put it into a short situation. So I would dwell on let's start with the kitchen, right?
Okay.
And in the kitchen now, the first thing to note is gas cylinders. Now, for gas fires, usually you would have an explosion. So it's the most volatile and the more dangerous of all fire incidences you would have, right? Because an explosion would definitely kill. So for gas fires in the kitchen, the one mistake most people make is one of two is, number one, you have your gas cylinders in the kitchen. Now, if your gas cylinder is in the kitchen and for any reason there is a fire outbreak that leads to an explosion of that cylinder, nobody in that kitchen survives it. So what that means in essence is, have we done sensitization exercise to get people to know that, oh, you shouldn't have your gas cylinders in the cooking area, right? Yes, because leakages could occur and then those gas leaks could lead to an explosion. So we usually would advise ensure the gas cylinders are where? Outside. If, most people will argue as to the cost of getting it outdoors is a bit high. And me, I would always argue from the point of, okay, if you say the cost of getting outdoors is high, what of the cost of life?
That's true.
Is it less expensive than whatever cost you would incur to getting the cylinder outside? No. So weighing that, get your cylinders outside. Number two is the camp gas, right? The camp gas is a horrible situation because it came into Nigeria at some point, and the reason it came in
Which
was
one are you referring to as a
that's
camp
your
gas?
camp
The
gas cylinder
small
where you
one.
have the burner sitting directly on the
Okay.
gas
That
cylinder.
one that
Yeah.
causes heat.
Yes, yes,
Very
yes.
well.
So now, for that situation of things, now when it did come into Nigeria, the plan was secondary means of cooking, meaning I've been cooking for a while. I was probably cooking beans, and then the gas finishes because beans takes time, and then I switched to the camp gas to finish up my cooking. Now, because of ease of use, most Nigerians now began to use the camp gas. And then if you were to take a survey of in a room, you'll see that about 60% of the time, most people there will tell you, oh, my primary means of cooking is the camp gas. Now, what's the problem with that? Number one, it's called a camp gas, meaning I'm going camping and I go with the gas small. I just go with it to cook while I'm camping. So it's not something you're supposed to be using every day. Sometimes I'm supposed to use maybe once in 3 months because nobody in Nigeria goes camping every day. And if you do go camping every day in Nigeria, then probably you shouldn't be insulting the president. But that's a joke on the side. But camping now in that sense, so I'm going once in 3 months. Now, if I'm using it every day, wear and tear increases.
Yes.
Definitely, it's a cylinder that has a burner sitting on top. If the wear and tear increases on the cylinder and then there is a leak, automatically it's going to explode because the burner is sitting directly on the cylinder. So what I usually would refer to the camp gas as is a time bomb. So if you had to ask me, I don't have an option, I will always say this. No problem, you don't have an option. But I will say, I can't tell you the day it would explode, but I can give you a blank check to the bank that it would explode. So why have a time bomb in your kitchen in that sense? So advices, put that thing away. I'm not even saying use it occasionally. Don't even just use it. I'm against it. That's both personally and professionally. Right. So now that's a situation of things. Number two is people tend to leave and thank God. I think I would appreciate what's the light producing agent for this area now? Is it
Ikeja Disco.
Ikeja Disco? I would appreciate them for the band A situation of things because for some reason people are now switching off electrical devices like we want them to. 2 years ago you will leave all your devices on. And those things have a tendency of leading to a fire outbreak. Why is that so? Because the wiring systems you have wiring systems that can fail because of high voltage. And Nigeria's current is a bit erratic. It's not as stable as it should be. So most times those high voltage will come in and then the wiring begins to melt and you have a fire outbreak. Now, what do we say is the prevention for that? Switch off all electrical devices. Now, luckily, because of the band A situation, we don't need to say switch off. Everybody's switching it off, which is very good. We're appreciating the Ikeja Disco Electric Agency for that. So people are switching off all electrical appliances. Now, why is it necessary? So take, for example, December period of time, we usually would have high number of fire outbreaks. And if you were to trace it, when we do our checks and our research, we'll trace it bound to the Christmas lighting.
Okay.
Now, what was happening? People were going to their offices, and for some reason, they will leave the Christmas lighting on, deciding to entertain the angels, because they need to be entertained. And then,
Angel Gabriel.
yeah, Angel Gabriel and the likes of them. And then, while the entertainment is going on, the angel that's supposed to watch the house is not watching, definitely now, right? He's getting entertained. So now, there's a high voltage that comes in. The lighting is on, and the lighting is usually would get to every area in the building, right? So if there is any point where there's a fire outbreak on that Christmas light, to get to every area that wiring touches in the building, and then you have a fire outbreak. Right? So in that sense and in that situation, what is the word for it? While you are leaving your home or going to bed, switch off all electrical appliances. Number 3 area will be refueling a generating set while it's still running. Now, the best suitable situation of things is you switch off your generating set when you want to refuel and then wait for it to cool down before refueling it. Nigerians wouldn't do that. Now, and I'll paint a scenario for you. So you find someone, Chelsea fan, watching a football match, right? And then while he's watching a football match, he notices he's running out of fuel, right? And then because he doesn't want to miss the loss, because we know they will lose, he runs to generating set and while it's running, refuels it. Now, automatically, the fire would not occur. It doesn't occur that day you do it, right? Because the interplay might not be perfect. But on the day when you have a perfect interplay of heat, fuel, oxygen, and you refuel the generating set when it's running, you would have an explosion and a fire outbreak. And then now you're losing 2 things. Now you're losing the match You're losing a limb or something in that sense. So what are we saying? What's the advisable thing to do? Switch off the generating set, wait for it to cool down before refueling that generating set. So, and that's just to touch a few things. The last one I would touch is the amount of things you keep in your home. So now people would tend to buy things, keep the cartons. That's a horrible practice, right? You bought your TV 10 years ago, you kept the carton of 10 years TV. Why? You want to resell or you want to repack it, right? Now, what are you doing? You are putting down enough fuel for an eventual fire that would occur. Because take it or leave it, everybody would experience a fire emergency of some sorts, right? But the difference between a fire emergency and a disaster is both information and training, right?
Yeah.
So what's the information we're saying now? Don't keep fuel lying around for the fire. That means if you are not using that thing, either you store it in a place where you don't have electrical cabling or wiring, or there is no heat source, or dispose of it. The more of these items you have, the more fuel you have for the fire that would actually occur on the day it does visit in that sense. So that's just some things to.
So let's
Can I
look
ask
at
a question? Sorry. How true is this talk about having an explosion when using a phone beside a gas?
Okay, yeah. So okay, that's a good question
And I
actually.
think filling stations too.
Yeah, filling station. So if you notice, if you drive into any filling station, you would always see a sign that says switch off all mobile appliances
Yeah.
before.
Okay.
And the reason is simple. Do mobile appliances have heat production? Yes. Every mobile appliance, every device that has any form of electronical gadget has a heat source, radiation source. That would mean that if it has a battery, it emits radiation. And radiation is a type of heat. What that means in essence is it can ignite. So it could cause a fire, it could ignite and cause a fire. So what does that mean? I'm driving into a filling station. These things are fumes, right?
Okay.
That's the fuel has fumes. If you notice when you are refueling your car, if you look around the tank,
Yeah,
you would
there's a
notice some
fume.
things that are dancing around, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Those are fumes, right? Those things actually are flammable. Now, if
Mm.
I'm using my phone, depending on what type of phone, and usually the Chinese phones have a tendency of producing more radiation. 10
So
times
this-
more radiation than any other phone
Oh.
brand. So if I'm using those type of phones, or if I'm using maybe my Samsung phone, or I'm using my normal Android phones, and I have a lot of apps running at the same time, automatically I'm using the battery more, then definitely the radiation energy I'm emitting would increase. If I get that device close to the fumes of the fuel, if I'm able to get that device close to a gas leak of any sort, it could trigger an explosion. And case in point will be, I think the video is actually online, where there was a lady cooking in her kitchen, and then a call comes in on her phone, and then there was an explosion in the kitchen, right? And that was a horrible situation because she did lose her life in that situation. Now, so what's the worst? What happened there? Her phone was in use, right? Radiation energy is emitted. There was gas leak, and for some reason, maybe she didn't perceive the smell of gas, and then the radiation energy triggered, because a heat source triggered the gas. So you had fuel, heat, oxygen interplaying, and then it led to a fire outbreak in that sense. So definitely, word of advice: if you're dealing with gas, if you're dealing with fuel products, liquid fuel products, petrol especially, or aviation fuel, ensure to turn off all electrical appliances or
Okay.
mobile devices before using them. Yeah.
Thank you.
so let me take the conversation to Deborah.
Okay.
I want to, something was said about camp gas. Now, looking at in Nigeria, especially students,
Mhm.
that's mostly their means of, especially those ones that
Yeah.
stays off campus. How do you have you used the camp gas before?
Yes, when I was in school, I even had one of my friends had an accident with clamp gas like 4 days ago. So
4 days ago. Please, can you
Yeah.
tell us? Please, we really want to know the details of that, please.
yes, so she has 2 clamp gas.
Wow.
So she
Two.
ran out of one. She tried removing the head, the burner. She tried putting it in the second one. She didn't know that there was still like some gas, like little gas from the other one. I don't know if do you understand what I'm trying to
I
say?
get what you're saying, yeah.
And she already lighted the other gas. She lights the other gas already. Then she was sitting in the kitchen. She's a student while cooking and all that. She does a boom.
Wow.
So I'm interested in knowing the degree of what's her
Oh,
state
but thank God
currently,
nothing happened. She didn't die though, but she
Wow.
got injured.
like
Yeah.
face or something.
Legs.
So
Legs, wow.
based on that experience now, I'm trying to look at every student currently goes to school with a camp gas,
Yeah.
right? Goes to school with a camp gas. Now, from your own experience, what do
Yeah.
you think an agency like theirs should be doing?
Hmm. Well, with the situation of Nigeria, you can't say students should buy the the table gas or I really don't know. But I feel like I said, she creates more awareness about all these things. I mean, if she had known the risks attached to what she was doing, she wouldn't have done it.
But I don't agree. I don't
But
think
you
it's
know,
a,
when you say create more awareness, it's
Yeah.
like asking them to take it away completely. I think that's the only solution, because I still feel that if it's safety wise, it is
Yeah.
wrong for us to use can gas. Then why is government still allowing it? Why is your agency not talking about
why are they
it?
not enforced with
Enforcing
and
ensuring-
say
they
just
should
the way you
ban
have
Good
you have
question.
VIO stopping people
Yeah.
for certain things.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
No. So it's a good question actually, and as much as we would want to enforce, we are held back by two reasons. Number one, it's legal to buy a camp gas, because if you are using it for camping purposes, it's normal for you to want to buy it. Now, automatically, imagine if I said, you that wants to go camping, don't buy the camp gas again. That means I'll be punishing both the good and the bad situation, right? But what can we do in that? So we cannot say don't buy. Can we say don't use? No. Because that will mean I'll have to come into your home to carry out an inspection without informing you. Is it a possibility? No. Now, if we were armed, maybe we're not armed as an agency. I'm joking.
You know why? When you ask if it's a
joke,
possibility,
though, but-
Shey
So-
NEPA, they go people house, go cut lights.
Yeah, but the meter is outside.
Okay.
If your
Not
meter was
outside.
inside,
So by the time you come
nobody
and you
will pay
see
bills.
that the gas is out, the gas is not outside, then you should know that the gas is inside first of all.
What if I'm not using
Ah,
gas?
eh,
Then
Gas,
so that's
electric
you
cookers,
can
I've been using
police
stove.
comes with when police come to arrest you, what do they ask? Your
Yeah, but you know a police
permit.
is armed.
Okay, so
So
you
if he knocks your door, you can say you won't slam the door.
so
Somebody
no,
armed
we
and
we
say
don't want to
why.
arm you people because we know
No,
you're already
I'm saying
fighting.
No,
Once they give
funny enough, we actually have a bill that we are trying to pass in the house.
No,
and
but-
I'll explain why. Right?
Please, let's hear more about the bill.
So it's a bill that wants to get the fire service armed. Now, why is that needed in that sense? So you have us serving in states that are a bit volatile, right? And
Okay.
you expect us to drive a fire truck worth billions of naira to go and put out a fire in an area where we can get attacked without arms.
Why would you get attacked when you
It's
are
like you're trying to
Good
help
question.
them.
So take case in point, Lagos State. So there are some areas in Lagos State that are volatile in a sense because of you have touts, the touts, agberos, and the likes of them, right? In those areas. And then the moment the fire truck is passing, maybe either we are coming in and then probably there's this notion of they are already, if you've lost a building, you are not happy. You'll be looking for
Okay.
who you are going to
Oh,
blame in
blame.
that situation.
okay.
The group mob action also will have a mindset of who do we hold responsible in that situation. Now imagine the fire truck driving, either leaving or coming in. The mobs, and it has happened a lot in Lagos State, where the trucks get attacked, and then you have the drivers get beaten, or the pump operators or the firemen get beaten up. It has happened in Lagos, and Lagos is even a sane climate, right? Now imagine in those other climates where you have less exposure. Imagine how much of a risk that is to the truck, and truck is what billions, or to the men on duty. So the arming of the fire service is to protect the trucks, right? Not for oppression purposes. It's not like we're going to go to homes to go and check the gas. No. So what do we do for the gas situation? Sensitization, right? Do we go to schools? Yes. We have a book that is currently, there was a book written and it's out now, the fire service, and we're trying to get that to every secondary school, to try and educate them in that sense. So there's a book that has been written and we're taking to schools also. Then to universities also, I think universities also play a huge part in how they're able to help in that situation. Why is that so? So I would, case in point, my school, when I went to university, then they had a law that they were not allowed to cook. And if you wanted to cook, there was a central situation, right? That was not in the rooms or in the hostel. So if that is inculcated in every university, that would be good of a big help in that sense. And sorry to your friend for that situation also, but
Yeah.
who has two camp gases?
So
That's
is it an issue, or do you think is education is playing a part in terms of our educational level, literacy level in
Literacy
the
level,
country.
yeah, it does play a part. So take for example, in areas where you have more, like so Lagos is divided into island, mainland, right? You have less fire outbreaks in the island than the mainland. Two reasons. Number one, population and the space between buildings. Number two is literacy level and exposure. So on the island, you have more of literates than illiterates than on the mainland. And then most times on the mainland, you now have people do practices that are totally irrelevant. Like take for example, there was a case in point, and I'm going to be coming for the just fans once more. But case in point, there was a fire outbreak, and there was a vehicle on fire, right? And then somebody went to buy Omo powder, the powder, and started pouring the powder on the car. That's just
Directly.
wasting good powder directly. Wasting good Omo powder for washing, right?
But we used to see that a lot now.
Yeah,
How did they learn that first of all?
So the thought is foam.
Okay.
Foam puts out petrol fires. In the person's mind, foam puts out petrol fires. Automatically, the powder should do the same thing. Whereas if you don't
for the
mix,
benefit of those that are watching us,
Yeah.
what you call foam.
okay, yeah. So okay. So when I say foam, I'm not talking the mattress foam at home. No, I'm talking you mix your detergent powder with water. Whatever comes out usually would have foam on it, and that foam is what puts out the fires. So in that situation now, what's the Chelsea fan thinking? Sorry, what's the guy thinking? He's thinking, I'm going to pour the detergent powder, and if the detergent powder and water can put out the fire, then detergent powder actually should be able to also do the same thing. No, that's just wasting good
or
material.
to do more.
So you have to mix the powder with water, create foam. Now for the fire service, and we're talking now, all these things I've been saying, I've been dwelling on first aid fire situations, right? Fire still at the incipient stage. That means the fire is not a major fire incident yet. That means it's just starting. It's still a small fire.
Still manageable.
You can use all these means to put them out. So if you mix water and detergent, you can actually put out, but not for major fire incidences. Now for major fire incidences, you have company produced foam that are used by the fire service to put out protein foams that they use, like PPP and then AFFF. Those are the foams they use for the fire trucks and all that, in that sense. So I just need to throw that in.
Now, talking about we've touched the household now.
Yeah.
And also I was saying, touching the household, we need to talk about the children. Talking about the children, you need to talk about the caregivers now. So caregivers are one of the stakeholders when it comes to talking about fire hazards at home. Where is their place in Debbie? I'm directing this question to you now. Where is their place in all of this? Because, like we said, we talk about sensitization, and the sensitization might be focused on maybe the parents, both when they're at home or at work. But for caregivers, these are a set of people that we hardly pay attention to, other than they come in, they do their work, and most times take care of the kids. Now, the parents are not at home. The children are at home. The caregivers are with them at home. So if anything happens, they are directly responsible at that point in time. A case in example is a famous musician who lost his child. There were preventive measures maybe that could have been taken that could have prevented that accident. So what is the place of the caregivers in all of this? How do you think they should be captured when we're talking about sensitization?
Okay, first and first, before you employ a caregiver, you should evaluate them. You should understand the type of person they are. You should actually put them to some tests before you can leave your children with them. You don't just leave your children with any kind of person. So you evaluating them first would give room for you to know that, okay, this person is actually intelligent enough. I can actually keep my child with this person. This person knows what to do and what not to do. Do you understand me?
Yeah. But does intelligence amount to... Look at intelligence. There's a place for intelligence, there's a place for negligence. You can be intelligent and also be negligent.
Exactly.
But like you said, before you employ a caregiver, you need to check who the person is, evaluate the person properly. But in evaluating people, there are still certain areas that even we ourselves we neglect, probably because we don't consider it being too serious. And like I said earlier in my introduction, that we don't really like to talk about fire hazard at home. You know, we are Africans. We always say, God forbid, God forbid.
Well,
We don't want to talk about it.
I don't know about other homes, but in my own home, my mom is always particular about fire.
Maybe because you are a safety person.
Not because I'm a safety person. She's particular about fire every time. Oh, don't switch on the gas. Don't do this. Don't. Before we sleep, she calls. Have you checked the gas? I mean, that's what a parent should do.
Okay, let me create a scenario for you now. Now, for example, let me talk about life and death.
Okay.
You have people, you talk to someone that, can you prepare I will advise you prepare your will at the age of 50. The person says, God forbid. Because the next question will now be, do you want to kill me? Do you want me dead by this time around? So same thing applies to fire. Because we are too religious, we sometimes neglect what we are supposed to do. Now, we now leave that responsibility to God. Forgetting that God has done everything. It is not our own responsibility. That's why I'm saying that in some homes, or a majority of the homes, we tend to neglect this part of our life. We don't like talking about fire hazards. I don't know why we run away from it. I will tell you, there are certain things, even me, while growing up, there were some practices that till date, I cannot even explain. Now, I want to plug maybe any electrical device. You know, there are some that will have two pins.
Yeah.
And I'll be using spoon. Sincerely, sometimes I wonder that how was I able to survive it? But at some point, I realized that, this thing that I'm doing is wrong.
So before you did that, has anyone told you not to do it?
That was the key question.
Do I want to say yes? Do I want to say no?
Because
if I say yes, if I say no, no one has told me, I'll be indicting your people, parents.
Your folks,
But if they didn't tell you, they didn't tell you now.
I'm trying to recall if they did, because I know the house I grew up in, we are always careful. They teach us. But like I said, there are certain things that we leave out that we will not even pay attention to. Not because we are irresponsible, but because we feel it's not something to be discussed, or it's unimportant, or we are a bit too religious about it.
I want to they teach us by scaring us rather than explaining to us. That's what I came to understand. So when you brought out the case of using spoon, I think I won't even say I used to do that till maybe 5 years ago. I would just, instead of down to even wanting to clean my ear, I will leave the cutting board and carry nail. The only thing I check for is it clean? And this was the reason. The satisfaction that the nail gives me, I feel like it itches the ear more than when I'm using. So now, and I observe that.
Sorry, what ear was that? I want to know if you can still hear.
Of course, I hear very well. Any of my ear.
Just joking.
Yeah.
Side joke,
So what I observed was with the electrical thing, my dad will never tell you then this is don't do that. This is the reason why you shouldn't do that. I remember it is don't touch it, bring it. He will do it himself. He's the one that is being careful. Now, because he's being careful, I discovered that as a child, you want to learn why is this thing dangerous, and you carry that thing you get. So maybe that was the training system. So I'm not scared to indict my parents. I believe that the truth is you only train a child with the experience you have. Now we have known better and we are making this. And we, whether we like it or not, we are still going to make mistakes that the children of tomorrow will still look back and say, our parents were making mistakes in this area. So I'm not scared to fault the training.
I think that's
system.
an error of omission, not commission. Okay, they didn't realize they had to
do it this way. Yeah.
Not that they were they absconded from their responsibility totally.
Yeah, true.
True. Now, so we've touched the family, the household, the children. Now let's talk about offices, especially high-rise buildings. Do you think there are safety measures that are missing in high-rise buildings? In the past, we've had buildings crumble. We've had fire incident as well. So what are the things you feel are lacking that could have been responsible for this?
Okay, I think for the building collapse and then having fire preventive measures in buildings, high-rise buildings, it usually would boil down to what was the plan
Yeah.
before the building construction, because usually there will be a plan, right? On mode of construction, there will
Yeah.
be different measures that are already on the plan. Now, this is where the problem lies. According to the National Fire Safety Code, 2013, and I would always refer to that document. Before you even construct a building, you have to actually acquire a permit from the fire service. Now, the process is you submit the drawings, the plan of your mechanical, structural, and then architectural drawings to the fire service. Then they would vet it, make adjustments, advise you here and there, and then they would give you initially issue a first permit. Initial
Okay.
permit. Now, upon completion of the building, you are supposed to invite them over to do an inspection of that building, right? To check for, oh, wait, did you do everything we said you should do in the drawings? Because they would give you those recommendations and they will put them in the drawings for you. So you're supposed to now carry out that. Now, we now have a situation where, because to an extent enforcing this law is not it's not that it's not there, but it's not due to the sense of it's not an agency that has it's not an agency that is feared. There is no fear of the fire service in that sense.
Yeah.
So if I said I want to enforce the law, it's a bit difficult now, because I'm not afraid of you, right? It's because of the uniform. I'm not afraid of the uniform. So tendencies of enforcing are usually most difficult, right? But is it a law? Yes. And then those measures are to be put in place before the building construction. Take for case in point now would be there was a building collapse that happened in, I think it was VI area. They had a building, the building, they constructed more floors than they had initially put in their plan, right? Now the problem with that was the fire service visited our site,
Okay.
and then we tried to enforce that your drawings have not been submitted. We've not been able to vet this structure, and then for some reason, knowing Nigeria setting, this man knows this man that knows this man, put some calls through, and they told us leave the place in that sense. So enforcing was difficult, right? The building now collapsed. The fire service is not able to say, okay, these are documents that showed we visited your site to vet it, and we're not allowed access. So now, by law, before the construction even commences, every building is supposed to be vetted by the fire service. Now, what's the mode of doing things now? The mode of doing things now, because we don't have a manpower to go everywhere because of the number of buildings you have in Lagos State, right? So we usually would say construction companies, companies that are into the building, just send these drawings in before we even come and say we want to check, right?
Okay.
Communicate to the fire service that I have a building, right? I want it vetted, and it helps a lot. Two reasons now. Number one, we're able to tell you if the structural integrity of the building is secure. Number two, we're able to advise you on things to put in place that would ensure that in case of a fire incident in future, you're able to mitigate against such, right? And those things are now in the plan from the start of the building. And when the building is now finished, when we come for our checks, we're just going to tell you, okay, you have a host reel system in place for high-rise buildings. That's beautiful. Train these people on how to use them. You have a hydrant in place, and the hydrant is a key station in the sense of, in Lagos State, where it's expected that for any company that's above 2-story buildings, 3 stories upward, you have to have a hydrant on your
Okay.
premises. But the cost of putting a hydrant system in place is quite high.
Okay.
So most people bypass that. And then the case in point will be, there's a factory that at that Ilupeju area there was a serious fire incident that happened, right? And they are into production of this rubber slippers. And then there was a fire outbreak, and they lost the entire factory. Why did they lose the entire factory? Because the materials they were producing very flammable. Number two, there was no hydrant system. And you know, the fire trucks have limited amount of water.
Yeah.
So the point is that when the fire truck drives to your premises to put out fire, once they expend the water they came with, they're supposed to refuel on site with your hydrant. But because there is no hydrant system in place, the first truck has expended water, the second truck has expended water, the third one has expended water, they have to go back to refuel
Wow.
before coming back to your site. Whereas if you had just followed the law, get your hydrant in place, it would have said that. So for high-rise buildings, I would advise, and this is just to advise now, ensure that before construction commences or even mid-construction, send in your drawings to the fire service, federal fire service or state fire service. Send your drawings in for vetting, get an advice, have someone from the fire service consult on your building. You can just call an officer from the fire service and say, okay, I just need a bit of consultation. We're starting this high-rise building. What are the steps to take? Have them consult, and then you'll see that it would save money in the long run in that sense. I just need to answer that in that manner.
When we are talking about negligence and intelligence, where you pointed out that you want to get a caregiver for your home,
Okay.
and you were saying that you need to evaluate how intelligent they are,
Okay.
and we are pointing out that my host here was pointing out that intelligence doesn't equate to how careful you are. Sometimes you can be very intelligent, but I think we Nigerians take risk a lot. So what are those things you're going to look out for if you want to get a caregiver for your home, with the mindset that, look, everything's safety, whether down to fire and any public health safety? What are those things you look out for to know that this person is both intelligent enough and is not negligent?
Okay. Well, if I'm going to hire a caregiver for my kids, I'm going to make a research on that person first, rate the level of experience, and understand, like I said, understand the kind of person, understand the type of person the person is. So honestly, there's really no way telling if this person is actually very careful or not. There's no particular way of telling than monitoring and ringing it in the caregiver's ears. You have to do this, you have to do that. It has to be a constant instruction. You have to instruct your caregiver on what to do.
So you know why I'm kind of if you look at a lot of homes, people that they call caregivers, sometimes it's someone they just went to bring from the village.
True.
Now, with all of what I've heard from Wale here, those people don't come equipped with these things. You have to impart. So how much risk do you just want to take?
That's why I'm not going to employ someone from the village, like I said. If I'm going to if anybody should want to employ a caregiver, employ someone that is well experienced. You don't just leave your kid with any type of person.
Sometimes those persons that you feel they are well experienced, they are well experienced truly.
Yeah.
They know what to do.
Yeah.
But sometimes when they are overwhelmed with work, in quotes, they may decide to say they may be lazy.
I think we've seen videos of those things online where people install cameras, monitors, and then they just see what their caregivers are at home doing.
It's possible that the deed may have been done by the time you are realizing that a lot would have happened. It's not every time you stay glued to your camera, but maybe sometimes you just check periodically. So I feel that, okay, you are bringing in a new person into your home. The first 1 week or 2 weeks, pay a very close attention to that person.
Yeah.
Put such person into some tests that are not visible to that person. For example, you want to find out if the person is naturally a thief. You drop money in awkward places to see what the response will look like. Send the person on errands, intentionally forget to collect the balance, see whether the person will respond or see what the response will be like. So, and in some other cases too, you will definitely observe maybe within the first 1 or 2 weeks. Maybe the first 1 week, the person might be overzealous, he wants to impress you.
Yeah.
But there is a limit to, what's it called now? To pretense. It will get to a time you become your real self. Now, maybe the second week, third week, you are not seeing who that person is. Then maybe sometimes, occasionally, you bust in. Maybe you close from work by 5. Once in a while, 1, 2, come in to see what the person is doing. These are ways of really checking out if the person is up to the task or not.
Yeah.
But sometimes also, you have to pay attention to yourself as well. Is the person overwhelmed with work? There are times, like you said, you bring people from the village. You know the amount of work such a person can do. Now, you are bringing in, let's say, an 11-year-old child or a 12-year-old child to care for a 6-7-year-old child. What's the age difference? Now, such person, you load that person with so much work, person becomes overwhelmed. Person will get tired. So sometimes I feel that maybe we also will have a part to play. I don't want to say we are responsible for it, but we have a part to play as well. Now, still talking about fire hazards. Let's talk about vehicles.
Right.
We've seen some vehicles that have gone up in flames. Maybe there's a fire accident. Like I said, education is very key. We don't know what to do. We feel, okay, we should pour sand, do this, some things that maybe we'll watch them in movies, or some things just come to us naturally. So if there is a fire hazard with a car, what is the next thing for me to do as a person?
Okay. Good. That's a good question, actually. Regarding cars. So for cars, usually would advise I would do both preventive and then what to do in the actual emergency.
Okay.
So preventive measures will be ensure your vehicles are serviced properly and timely. If you're doing a once a month servicing, do that regularly. Do checks to servicing. Why is that necessary? Because you don't want a buildup of grease, the oil and the buildup of grease in those key components that might lead to a fire outbreak because fire would not just occur in a vehicle that is serviced and functional. So if it's not serviced,
those oil grease, they could actually be responsible
yes,
for
they are
fire
mostly
outbreak?
yes, yeah. If your engines are overheating or they are not serviced properly, they will lead to overheating. Those things are actually responsible for
leaks.
leaks that could occur.
Okay.
So, but servicing the vehicle regularly prevents that. So, best case scenario, ensure the vehicle is serviced properly. Worst case scenario, you now have an emergency, a fire emergency on your vehicle. The first thing is, do you have a fire extinguisher in your car? Now, why is it funny? You would see if you take for example this morning, if you drove past Third Milan Bridge this morning, you would see by the roadside that there was a car that was burnt down totally. Why did that happen? There was no fire extinguisher in the car. Because usually the fire for car fire situations, it's not an explosion like we watch in movies. It's a gradual process where the car just keeps burning and then it gets to the fuel tank and then intensity increases and then the car is burned down. And this takes time. So it's not immediately that in seconds you lose the car. No. Now, on Third Milan Bridge, you don't have access to water. You don't have access to sand.
Even though you are close to the lagoon.
You don't have access to any of the traditional methods we use. Sand, water, you can't get foam anywhere as your detergent mixed with water foam. So automatically the only source of extinguishing or the only medium of extinguishing fire is your car extinguisher. Now imagine someone that now spent millions of naira on a car and then couldn't spend a few 20,000 to buy an extinguisher. That's just, you were just willing to lose the car in that sense, because that means you don't want to insure it. Now, why not just buy the extinguisher? Buy more than one, have two. One in the boot, one in the car itself, the main car itself, because you could have a situation where you can't access the boot, right?
Okay.
And then you need to access the one in the car. Have the extinguisher on ground and have it serviced. The extinguishers have an expiration date, right? So if it expires, and usually it's advised that you service them every 6 months.
Even when it has not expired.
Even when it has not. There are two expiration dates an extinguisher will come with. The first expiration date is the one on the cylinder itself that tells you the cylinder has expired.
Okay.
But the contents of the extinguisher also expires.
Okay.
So what you service every 6 months is the content.
Okay.
Every 5 years, you have to change the cylinder in that sense. So that's where there's the expiration that differs. So just do your servicing of the extinguisher every 1 year if it's a new one, then every 6 months if it's something that has stayed over a year. Now, have them serviced and ready to use. Now, in case you now have a fire outbreak, you're able to grab your extinguisher, right, quickly, get to the bonnet, and at this point, there's a technicality to handling it. You're not expected to open the bonnet fully. Because in opening the bonnet fully, you are allowing in more air. I remember that when we're dealing with the components of fire, I mentioned that air is one of the components, one of the things that fire likes and requires, right? So if you open the bonnet fully, you allow more air in, the fire intensifies. You could lose the car. So the best bet is to open the bonnet just a little to allow for the mouth of the extinguisher to seep through the bonnet. Then you discharge the content. It's made of DCP powder. The powder will travel almost everywhere and put out the fire in that sense. But that is in a situation where you have access to an extinguisher. Traditional methods that do work, but not as well as the extinguisher, will be sand, which people do use. Green leaves, very green leaves that are not dry. So fire would
Just any
usually
green leaves.
very green, but you need a very large quantity, so it's not even advisable. But I would like the sand idea. Sand is good. Foam and water, if you could get water, if you get foam and water, those are good also. Now, quantity matters for those ones because need a large quantity of all those volumes to put out the fire. Not just quantity matters. Number two is for water. Water doesn't go well with the engine.
Okay.
Right. So at that point where you're using water, it's at the point where you're saying, okay, at this point I don't mind losing the engine and saving the car itself. And that's just that on that.
So I want to, before I come to, okay, I think I should ask you before. There's a question I want to ask, which is very important. However, are there any challenges you face in your field with people like this, or that you've experienced, Debbie, or you've heard from your studies, right?
Okay.
With fire service personnel, whether it's in terms of responsiveness or generally, because we really want people out there to know, and then most probably will react to them.
Well, the general issue is that they don't respond on time when you call them.
Have you ever experienced it before?
No, but I hear people say it. I've not been in any fire accidents.
Would you want to react to that now? Can you tell us how many minutes, hours
Does it
will it take you guys to respond to a
Very
call?
good question. Very good question, actually. So, first and foremost, the fire service will ply the same roads you ply. So if they ply the same roads you ply, you would there are some things you take into cognizance, right? Traffic. They would experience the same traffic situation, congestion you experience. Right of road. Now, the fire service, emergency vehicles have right of road. Meaning, if an emergency vehicle is coming and then they put on the siren, what that means in essence is every other vehicle should give them way.
Okay.
But in Nigeria, for some reason, we tend to, Nigerians have this mentality of everybody's lying.
Yes, I was going to say that.
So with that mindset already, when they hear the siren, they are thinking, it's a lie, there's no emergency, Joe. Right? And then they don't give right of way. Now, at that point, I can't come down and start fighting to prove a point, and then the building gets burned down. So there's no way to actually curtail that. But apart from sensitization exercises like this, which is a beautiful platform in that sense. But so we ply the same roads, we'll face the same traffic. Number two is information. How well did you disseminate that information to the fire service when you called in? And most times people will call in and give a very vague explanation of where the fire is occurring. Take for example, somebody calls in and says there's a fire in Ikeja.
Okay.
And you're asking where, and the person has already called the call. And then you are now driving, and you are driving to Ikeja. And Ikeja is a very wide area of mass of land to cover, right? So where do we go to find that fire station? We now have to start tracing. That takes time, right? And in a fire situation, every second counts. So within the space of 5 minutes, you could have 10 minutes, the whole building is burned down. And we are still trying to locate. So all those factors come into play in that situation. Number three factor is there's a mentality that comes with people that says we perform magic. We don't. The one thing I can assure you is the moment the call comes into the fire station, it takes about 40 seconds for the fire truck to leave the fire station. Now, from that point, very serious about that. You put a call through to any fire station now, 40 seconds will be the max time you'll see for the fire truck.
I wish we could put that call out, but there's
no
fire.
No. The reason why I wouldn't say put the call, we won't test that theory is because it's a crime to give a wrong call.
Did you make a call when your friend had the gas?
I was not there.
Okay. I wanted to know.
Whenever I'm saying it here now so that you have that information on hand, Abi. So any day you do discover a fire situation, right? Put a call, or if you have time.
I want you.
Let me give you something. Let me give you an advice now. So what I would advise is this: go to any fire station close to your area, spend 1 day there, and hope for a call. No, that's a bad thing to hope for actually. But if you do get a call, watch how fast the car moves, because the car is already ready. It's not like they are doing anything. The driver is already on seat. The changing the fire tunics, and everything we need is already in the vehicle. So they don't need to even change into anything. They just need to do what? Mount the vehicle, drive out. They will do all the changing in the vehicle. Everything they need is in the vehicle already. everything that is going to be used in the fire scene is already inside the vehicle. So the only thing that is needed once the call comes in is for men to do what? To mount the fire truck and drive out. That is less than 20 seconds. That
So
will be
to-
At
just
what point
30
do you start
seconds.
counting?
From the moment the call ends. From the moment the call comes in, when the call ends, from that time till the truck leaves the gate of the building, that's the time frame I'm looking.
So I have two questions
Yeah.
before I think that is the fire service, is it in Nigeria? Is it well equipped, well funded? And that first of all, react to that.
Okay,
before I ask
so
my last
reacting
question.
to that, well equipped, well funded, we are better than where we were before. That'll be my response.
Okay, so I think I have the answer.
Then,
So you are saying better than where you were before doesn't mean you are getting the best of funding.
No.
That means there's still room for improvement.
There's room, definitely.
So what's the
there's room
margin
for
of improvement?
Margin of improvement. So let me give you a hindsight of it.
No, I think I would
So-
prefer statistics. What's the margin of improvement?
No, you can't statistically weight because you have to compare to something.
Okay.
And there's no figure to compare to now. So there will always be room for improvement in that sense because I can't compare to anything. I don't know if you get what
Yeah,
I mean.
I get you.
There's no standard to compare to, so there always room for improvement. But
No, but I think there is a
statistically now-
standard. If you and this is the standard I mean, if
Yeah.
you're looking at other climes,
yeah,
I'm
even
looking
other
at-
climbs. So if you take, for example, in the US, there's room for improvement.
yeah, so now compare your fire service.
Nigeria fire service to
Yes,
the US fire
yes,
service.
or to Australia where we have a lot of fire incidents.
Yeah, so they don't have as much as we have in Nigeria, though.
You can imagine.
They don't have.
But
as much.
Australia have more fire incidents.
No, they don't. They only have
Natural fire.
natural ones,
Yes,
which is
that-
the wildfire that will
yes, the
happen. And it only
wildfire.
happens once a year.
Okay, so
Right,
they are
during that
they
weather
are well,
situation.
They are well.
So, even at that, you will still see that. So take for example, for the Australia wildfire that occurred, I think the one from last year. I don't know about much about this year, but last year you had loss of life of firefighters. You had the fire burn down more forest than they planned for, right? So that would tell you that even with all that was invested in that, they still
okay,
had
so what's the
those
margin
losses.
for improvement? You were speaking to that.
So that's what I'm
Nigeria,
saying. So the
yeah.
margin for improvement for Nigeria is: do we need more fire trucks? Yes, in Nigeria. We usually would focus more energy on areas where we have more fire situations, right? And then the lesser fire stations would suffer the consequence of it. So, but do we need more fire stations? Yes. Do we need more fire trucks? Yes. Do we need more personnel employed? Yes.
So what's the margin of success in terms of your response when it comes to when you go out to respond to fire calls? How often do you come back with success? Because you said something, a lot of times when these things happen, the touts in some of those areas are looking for who to blame. So in terms of what you go to, how often do you quench this fire? How to a good extent?
So I would use case in point, most recent of situations, right? We have the one in market. I think it's the Balogun Market fire incidents that happened where you had one building erupt in flames, and we were able to curtail that to just that building, right? And then just the top floor. So we were able to stop it from spreading to other buildings. Whereas, and because those buildings are conjoined in a sense, you could have had 100 of them go up in flames. So because we're able to maintain just one and stop the fire, mitigate it from spreading in that sense, we're able to help that situation. You could take another example, would be House of AY. I don't know if you heard about that.
Yeah, that one was...
that was not a total loss also. So we're able to stop the thing from spreading to other rooms and other floors in that sense. So success rate sometimes, good news.
Okay. All right. Lastly, now, I know you've been able to touch on a whole lot of areas. So just to wrap it up, now, I will want you to identify things that we Nigerians, we treat with levity.
Okay.
We do that, and how we can prevent in terms of fire hazards.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So things that we do that we ought not to be doing,
Okay.
then also safety measures that we need to adopt, both at home, at workplace,
Okay.
in public places, religious organizations, things that we can do.
All right. Okay. That's a good question actually. So first and foremost, risk assessment. Ensure you carry out a risk assessment of your premises, either private or public premises, regularly. Expect it to do it at least once a week, right? What does that mean? Risk assessment is just you checking the area, right, where you dwell and ensuring that anything that is of risk or can lead to a hazard or to loss of life or property, you mitigate or remove it. And then a simple exercise would just be check around the room. What is wrong? How do I fix it? That's risk assessment. So I would advise that for offices and for the homes, do a risk assessment. Now, most times you have them done in the offices. Most times most people don't do them at home,
Okay. Yeah.
which is a bad practice, right? Because if you are safe in the office and unsafe at home, it's just still the same problem not being solved. So ensure you carry a risk assessment at home. Check around the home. What can go wrong? What can go bad? What can be horrible? How do I solve it? Solve it immediately. Fire drills. Most offices will conduct a fire drill once a year. It's advised that every office conduct at least once a year. We also advise that you take it home also. Almost a fire drill, evacuation drill is just where someone raises an alarm and then everybody's to evacuate the building to a place of safety, which is usually the muster point. So now it's advised that you don't just do that for the office. Take that practice home. It helps the children. It helps your spouse because they may be stay-at-home situation, Abby. So what does it do for them? They will go to malls, they will go to schools. If they hear an alarm, rather than panic, they will
Okay.
tend to respond better. Why? Because
Yeah.
they've had drills that has trained them to that situation. So in that sense, fire drills, take it home. Ensure you have an extinguisher in your home and in your car. And most people at this point, when I say this, most people will say, well, we're not praying for fire, God forbid bad thing. And I will usually argue this point. I'm lovely, you're not praying for fire, but you're not also praying for thieves. You have a security guard, you have a security dog, you have a security fence, you have a security door. In fact, you have an estate to have a security for the estate.
Yes.
If you are putting in that much effort and you are still not praying for it, why not do the same for fire? We didn't say you should pray for it, but ensure that even in the eventuality it does occur, you are prepared. Then also, even for the risk assessment, you can invite the fire service to come and do a risk assessment of your premises. Both the office and the home will come. We don't even charge much. Just, thank you for coming and we're good in that sense. And, thank you for coming is relative to the to the end user of the thank you for
That
coming.
means you profile the person. and
No. So in that sense, but I'd invite us over. You could invite us when you're constructing your building. Have us consult. You could invite us to get gadgets for the home or the office. Depending on how high taste you are, we'll give you a budget to friendly description of the items you could have. Have an extinguisher for your car, have one for the office, have one for the home. Have the fire service numbers saved on your phone on speed dial. The number that is most easy to recognize is the 112 emergency number. And for the 112 emergency number, you can call it and dial the 112 and it treats all emergencies. So have that number saved on your phone on speed dial. But if you do have that number saved on your phone, if you can go further, check for the fire station closest to you and get their phone number also. Not for the fire station alone, for the police station closest to you. Go to the police station, walk into the police station, get the phone number of the police station. How do you do it? Usually, I would just say, if you take a bottle of wine, and the bottle of wine is not expensive, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, get a bottle of wine. Just say you want to go and greet the DPO of the station. Take a bottle of wine. He's not expecting anything from you, right? Because that's his service. That's what he's supposed to do. Then he now sees somebody coming with a bottle of wine. What do you think becomes your building? High priority, right? That means if for any reason you put a call through, what would he do? He would attend to it immediately.
Yes, you always
get exactly. So in that sense, what did it cost you? 2,000 naira bottle of wine.
Yeah.
He doesn't know the price. He just appreciates the fact that what I'm not expecting, somebody was able to bring and appreciate me. With that, you've created a leeway for you. So do something like that in that sense. Then switch off all electrical appliances. Immediately you're closing for work. At home also, you're leaving for school or for the office. Switch off all electrical appliances. Don't overload the sockets. Ensure you clean the kitchen properly. Leave your gas cylinders outside, not indoors. And if for any reason a tanker falls on the road, trust me, it's not free fuel. It's stealing if you take it. And imagine if that tanker gets on fire and you get burnt and then you die. I'm moving from one burning situation to another burning situation. I just need to say that. So that's that.
All right, thank you very much. It's been a wonderful and interesting episode today. You've heard from the experts. You know what to do when there are fire hazards now, and also the safety measures that have been mentioned here. Please, let's try and adopt those safety measures. It's for our own good. It's nice having you guys again. It's been an interesting session with you, and I hope to see you guys again. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.